I'm going in a lot of directions on the handout, which is another reason why some of this stuff I'll go through kind of quickly. But I know each of you, just like me, each of us is in a different situation. And so there may be issues that you have with safety, there may be issues that you have with budgets or whatever else. So I tried to cover as much of that as I could think of. And then just one other thing, and I hope that you've been realizing this too through this whole challenge, is that all we can do is to do our best. We're all doing our best that we can for the students. That's all we can do. We had no idea any of this was going to come up. It's not going to be at the level that we really would want if the students were with us safely every single day. So don't feel bad if you're not doing everything at the same high level that you've been used to doing. So here we go. Let's start looking through the handout. And the first section is labeled Staying Safe, and what we're learning about wind instruments, aerosols, and carbon dioxide. And you can read that paragraph and the links that are there and so forth. If you haven't been following the aerosol studies, this first little chunk gives you the links so that you can start reading these things. Everything that the experts have told us so far has been preliminary, and the final results should be out in November. That's what they're hoping to do. So my biggest suggestion there is keep reading what the experts are saying and try to do that. That's what I'm doing too. Also, don't rely on what I say, and don't rely on what the person down the road is saying. Read what the experts are saying, watch what they're saying, and then try to do that to keep yourself and your students safe. So letter B, keeping yourself safe and your students safe. As I indicate here, my primary concern is the health and safety of everyone. And so these are the protocols that I've been studying based on what I've been reading from those aerosol studies. In my room, I'm lucky that I can keep the outside door open during rehearsal. And so as I've been monitoring, and I'll talk more about that later, the air quality in our band room has been really quite good. But not all of you have that opportunity. Maybe you don't have an outside door or windows, and maybe if you do, there are other security issues that you have to deal with in your school. So be sure that you're talking with your people to make sure that you're doing things the way that they expect you to do. As I mentioned, I bought myself one of those carbon dioxide detectors that the experts were telling us about. And so I've been monitoring the CO2 levels during rehearsal to make sure the CO2 isn't accumulating. And the whole idea there is if the CO2 is accumulating, it probably means that the air isn't being changed fast enough. And what Dr. Miller had suggested to us is that we should shoot for 600 parts per million of CO2 to be safe. And I've been lucky that in my room, at least, it's been able to do that with the door open. But I wasn't sure what is the threshold that really gets dangerous. So I emailed Dr. Miller on Friday, and I really appreciate the fact that she got back to me right away and mentioned that yes, 600 is what we're looking for, but if it goes up to 800, you're probably still okay. She said she would start getting really worried if it went over 1,000. So that's what I'm looking for, and that makes me feel pretty good that if we're around 600, we're still going to be in good shape on that. One of the other things the experts are telling us is rehearsals lasting approximately 30 minutes. For me, that works out just fine. For some of you that have to have a classroom of students for more than 30 minutes, that's something you'll have to probably discuss with your administrators. But the idea, of course, is 30 minutes of rehearsal followed by at least 20 minutes where everybody clears the room and the air is able to get cleared out and to be able to be changed. Now I'm on page 2. I've got the band set up in straight rows, which is another thing the experts suggested. Everybody's facing the same direction, unlike what we usually do when we're curved around and we're kind of blowing at each other. This way they're all just blowing straight ahead instead of at each other. Students are all wearing masks, and they're also wearing masks when they're playing. And I've been really proud of our students. If you guys are doing this too, I hope your students are having the same success. I've been very proud of our students with their attitude and their ability to be able to do this. It looks hilarious, but it's remarkable that they're doing such a terrific job. I, of course, am always wearing a mask, and I'm more than 6 feet away from the front row of students. Each student brings their own folding music stand, and then they take it from rehearsal, just like back in the beginner band days, so that we can keep things cleaner that way. Nobody's sharing music stands, nobody's sharing music, nobody's sharing folders. And then also using a personal sound system that I just happen to have. And so if you don't have one and don't have a budget for one, you might be able to just get an inexpensive microphone that you plug into a keyboard amp or something like that. The idea there is that I'm not projecting as much aerosol or droplets or anything if I'm using my regular voice when I'm speaking with a mask on using a microphone. The days of dumping spit on the floor, the spit valves are gone, so everybody's got a way that they can empty their instruments, and of course woodwinds too with their swabs, so that we're trying to stay as clean as possible. Everybody has their own bell covers, and we're requiring them that they can either purchase or make on their own. And all my students have made theirs, uh, probably partly because I was telling them about this early in the summer before some of the commercially produced ones have come out. But we'll talk a little bit more on bell covers on the next page or something like that. Maybe your school is doing cleaning solution. VU has cleaning solution, so that at the end of every class, we go spray the chairs and whatever else has been used. And then to make sure that we're always 6 feet apart, I have the floor marked with tape. And that way I'm sure that the distances are correct. And of course, it makes it easier to set up. And those of you that know my band room know that when community band is in there, usually on Tuesday nights, we can easily squeeze in 100 people. But with the distancing we have now, 33 is the maximum. So I know that those of you that are used to that room are chuckling about that, but we're trying to be as safe as we can be. And then now I'm on page 3. I created 3 ideas for some outdoor live performances. Because of safety protocols and some red tape, I'm not doing any of these, but maybe these will give you some ideas of something that you can do for some live performance. And the first one is what I was calling Prelude to the Prelude, and it's a lot like Porch Brass Ensemble at Lutheran Summer Music. We play for about 20 minutes before the final worship service. And that was my idea there, that we'd be outside, and as people are coming to worship, they hear the ensembles doing some playing. And we can be just as physically distanced outside. We can do the same thing with masks and bell covers and that sort of thing. We were going to try that with the Handbell Choir that I lead at my church, but then we decided that might not be such a good idea because a number of the people in our church Handbell Choir are in the high risk category. So we're going to wait on our church Handbell Choir for a little while. I also thought about what if we did what I'm calling a progressive music concert. And those of you that are familiar with our Center for the Arts know what the layout is, and we're on a flat piece of ground. And so I thought, well, what if we set up one group on the north side and one on the south side, one on the east side, one on the west side, and then each group play a little bit. And then audience members could walk from group to group or bring their chair from group to group. The groups wouldn't play at the same time, but it'd be another opportunity to be outside and to have some live performance. Part of our challenge here is our usual concert venue, the Chapel of the Resurrection, is not being used for performance this semester. So we're looking for other places that we can play, including outside. So that was the idea of that. It looks like our community band in Windiana will do another idea where we're going to go to one of the residential retirement villages in town, and then another one that is residential, but the people all live there in their own little houses or condos. And the people in charge there have given us permission to set up in one of the parking lots. And then the folks that live there can either look out the window, or they can drive up, or they can walk up wherever they want to do. So again, we're just trying to be creative and think about how we can do some performances in addition to the rehearsing that we're doing these days. The next section is the expectations for band members. And so I've put a list here, and the things that are in this list are protocols that I described already. Everybody's got their own stand. Everybody has a bell covering. Everybody's got a rag or a swab. Everyone's got masks. Everybody's bringing clothespins in case it gets windy. So that's what that list is. I just thought I would just include it here so that you had a list and you could see what I was sending to our students. And then the next one is about bell coverings. And again, this is what I sent to our students about how they might make bell coverings. So I'll go through this one with you. The experts are telling us that any bell covering is better than none. Some are better than others, of course, but better than having nothing. It's some sort of a bell covering. The MERV 13 material is most recommended, and nylon also recommended, especially thicker nylon and more than one ply of nylon and not stretched. Now I'm on page 4. They talked about surgical mask, and then I listed a whole bunch of other things down near the bottom there. And each of these has worked well, and I've appreciated the fact that the students have been handling this well. And I've been pleasantly surprised. I really wondered on the first day, what is this group going to sound like with bell coverings and then trying to play through masks? And it sounds remarkably good. And again, I've been proud of the students for hanging in there through all this, but everything that they have designed has worked out quite nicely. The next section is what my rehearsal room looks like. Some of you know this room, some of you don't. It doesn't really matter if you do or not. The spacing and the other protocols that I've described earlier are what we're doing, and especially having the outside door open, which I think has been very helpful when I've been doing that. And then I'll just jump over for a second to Handbell Choir, the VU Handbell Choir that I'm leading. We can open up windows in the chapel when we're rehearsing in there. Someone, Jen Chandler just wrote in to say, can you recommend coverings for classroom recorders? My 4th graders are devastated that we aren't able to learn to play this year. That's a great one. And actually I think that would be kind of easy to do. And what I would do, if you have some old nylons, you could use that and then use rubber bands or scrunchies or a drawstring or just string in general to wrap around the end of the thing. If you don't have that material, you could just make it out of old t-shirts or other rags or that sort of thing. The experts are suggesting, of course, the MERV 13 material or nylon, but since they're saying that anything is better than nothing, you could probably try that. And then I would personally try it first, just to be sure that having the end blocked isn't going to impede the sound. And I haven't tried it with a recorder, but I hope it would work as well as it's been working for our oboes and our clarinet players. Thanks for jumping in with that, Jen. And okay, so I did what the rehearsal room looks like. And then I was asked earlier about performances. And part of our challenge is that things are changing every day. I'm sure this is the same thing with you. So I've tried to be extra patient. I have a concert program picked out, and we're rehearsing toward that program. And if we get to play it, I really hope we do, we have something. So we're not just rehearsing at random. We're still learning what we need to learn, and we will be ready when something happens. We're hoping that we'll have some sort of a concert at the end of October or the beginning of November. And VU is done. We're done with finals by Thanksgiving. So end of October, beginning of November would work nicely for us. We did play chamber concert band. Our most advanced band played for the opening convocation. That's for the freshmen. It's usually held in the chapel. This year they did it on the football field. And so we were easily able to be safely spaced, and the students were able to sit safely on the bleachers with proper distancing and so forth too. So that's one thing that happened with us. We're also looking at a recording session for some Christmas music with all of our ensembles. And then I mentioned, hopefully we'll have another concert eventually. The next thing down there is what I sent to the bands about performances so that they would know. Part of our challenge too is that VU's policy, part of the safety protocol, is that if you're not a VU faculty, staff, or student, you're not allowed on campus right now without special permission. And so the idea there, of course, is that you're keeping the transmission down that way. Feels very strange, and especially since a lot of my job has to do with outreach. And having 100 people there on Tuesday nights for community band and 60 or 70 there for Windiana on Thursday nights, very strange to not be able to have the folks on campus right now. But at least it gives the students an idea of why and what's going on and how we're trying to be as flexible with performances as possible. Brenda just wrote in and said, For local band players, we're providing elasticized food and beverage covers as bell covers. We ordered them from Amazon, got a box of 50, 5 different sizes, 10 in each size, 20 bucks. They work from everything from clarinet, oboe to baritone for sure. Sounds like a great idea. We're all being creative, whatever it takes. Great, thanks, Brenda. And then if we have to go online, and I know you've been reading about universities all over the country that as soon as the students showed up, they got sent home. We've been doing really well here at VU so far and really appreciate everybody's efforts to make that happen. If we all get sent home, then we're going to try to make a studio album. And one of those, just like some of the rest of you have done, where the students record their own parts and then we'll put them together, we'll layer them together and make music out of it. We're not going to do the video part. I'm just interested in audio if we do that. And then each of the bands would have a different assignment depending on which group you're in about how many pieces you're going to do and that sort of thing. And I put on mine, just so I don't give anybody the wrong impression, I've made arrangements. I know the pieces that we will record if we record, and I've already made arrangements with the composers that they have granted us. They've waived their mechanical rights. If they hadn't done that, then I'd have to budget and find money to get the mechanical rights to happen. But in this case, it doesn't cost us anything. Fernanda just wrote in to say, do the players report feeling a significant difference when playing with bell covers? And no, actually, I wondered about that too. I thought people would complain, and I thought that they would tell me more about resistance and that sort of thing, but I'm not hearing that. Maybe people are just being patient and not telling me, but I haven't had anybody say yet that it's hard to play their instrument with the bell cover on. Back in the old days, like when I first started teaching, and I know some people still do this, on your sousaphones, maybe you'd have the name of your school or whatever, the initials of your school or something like that. And that seemed to work out well. And I kind of think that's what we're doing again now. Now I'm on page 5, and I want to talk about hearing health for a second. It would be easy to neglect hearing health. And those of you that know me know that I'm always talking about this, and it doesn't really have to do with the pandemic, but it's relevant since so many of you out there are band directors. Don't neglect your hearing health. And so this one, I'm just going to read the paragraph out loud. If you work with bands in person each day, I recommend using hearing protection. You can find an audiologist in your area to do a baseline hearing test for you and also fit you for musician earplugs. Don't end up like so many band directors who have lost their hearing. Think of hearing protection as insurance and as an investment in your personal health and career. I have visited and taught in many band rooms and gyms and auditoriums and large ensemble rooms, practice rooms, churches that were not healthy for hearing. And then this last line is really important to think about. No one else will think about your hearing. It's up to you to take care of yourself. And it's no one else's fault. It's not your principal's job to come down and make sure that it's not too loud in the band room. It's not the parents or the students. It's your job to make sure that you do that. And I know that those of you that are band directors know a lot of other band directors who lost their hearing after a few years. And so take care of that if you can, and think of it as an investment for yourself. So the next thing on page 5 here is in-person band. And some of you are doing this. This is what I'm doing too, but I'm not doing marching band or pep band, but that's the first thing on our list. And I don't know if you watched one of those webinars that Mark Speed was on, Director of Bands at Clemson, and I liked what he said there. He said the time the students spend with him each day for marching band is the safest part of their day since they're outside, practicing physical distancing, wearing masks, using bell covers, taking breaks every 30 minutes. So at one level, marching band is really quite healthy for us. And being outside for pep band or whatever, or rehearsing outside is one of the safest things that we can be doing. And of course, you can write your drills and so forth, your formations, so that the students can be physically distanced. Same thing with outdoor pep band, and even playing outdoor if they have space on the bleachers or in the end zones or on the sidelines for you to be able to space the students for safety. Now let's talk a little bit about smaller groups. I know that some of you are rehearsing with smaller groups than your full band. And here too, Luce Concert Band and Community Band are able to rehearse together. We have just enough space to make our 33-person limit right now. But Chamber Concert Band, our most advanced band, is much larger than that. So I can only rehearse half the band on any one day. And that's very frustrating to me, but that's just the way it is. And so we're trying to be flexible with the music that we picked and to be really efficient in rehearsal. So under flexible instrumentation, some of this I'm sure you know, but let's go through too. You're already aware that of the flex band arrangements that a number of the publishers have been publishing for years. That could work. There are other composers creating new compositions and arrangements for flexible instrumentation. And one of these just came up, maybe you got this from NAFME, is the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And that's one that you can Google and see what they are up to in the music that they're writing. And then you also know, I think, that you can create your own flexible arrangements by giving players parts that fit their transposition. So clarinets playing trumpet parts, alto saxes playing E-flat horn parts, and that sort of thing. So if you're looking at your ensemble and just being completely frustrated, whatever am I going to do with this combination of instruments, you might be able to start thinking about those transpositions and see what might work for your group of students. And that leads me into, what if you have no money for new music? And I'm usually in a point where my budget, if I have a budget at all, doesn't allow much for new music purchase. And it was the same thing when I was a high school teacher. So one of the things I did is what I've described here, to dig deeply into the library and try to find things that you might have never thought of using before. And the way some of these are arranged, they could work out well for you, and they could work out well for a smaller ensemble. Sorry for taking a little break there. The cursor isn't working. There we go. I'm going to stop for just a second and get to these questions so I don't get so far behind. Brenda's suggesting, for collecting dripping, condensation, and emptying spit valves, we also provide puppy pads, got from Amazon, package of 100 for $20. And the puppy pads were one of the things that the experts were telling us about. And that could certainly work. You could also ask people to just bring a towel and then they can take the towel home to wash it. And Doug Marsh says, I'm a trumpet player using a bell cover, experienced no difference in sound or effort with a bell cover. Great to know that. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Brenda. Back to Doug. Also using homemade slotted face mask from 2 medical masks stapled together with offset slots and no problem playing my trumpet. I've experimented with both vertical and horizontal offset slots. So that's good. And thanks, Doug. That's one of the things that surprised me. I just thought, how are they going to get the mouthpiece in there, big mouthpiece or small mouthpiece or reed? But the students got used to it in about 5 minutes, and that's just kind of their new thing that they're doing. And Caleb is asking about a flute mask or shield. The folks at first were talking about that wind defender that you've seen. Some of our students came in right at the beginning of the year with some kind of elaborate plastic that fit on the flute, or at least fit on their arm, so that they were kind of blowing into the plastic. And we aren't using those sorts of things. One of the biggest surprises, and again, the aerosol studies are not done yet, but many of us, including me, really thought that the worst instrument was going to be flute, because you're just blowing air right across the tone hole as far as aerosols production. But the latest, both the Colorado State and the University of Colorado and Maryland studies preliminarily were showing that flute was the least. And they were suggesting that that's because you're basically blowing and there aren't as many droplets as if you were buzzing or making a reed vibrate or something. So anyway, we have had some students using flute shields and that sort of thing. All of our flute players are playing with a mask. Some of them, the mask, the hole in the mask to me looks so large that I don't know if it's doing much good, but at least it's covering their nose and the sides of their mouths too. So I don't know that, Caleb, but that's a really good explanation. But we are using flute masks with the flute players, and we're not using shields. Other people might be using the shields, and you've probably seen, like I have seen, a whole bunch of really clever creative ideas for the shields that people have been making for flute. And of course, if the final study from the aerosols people in November comes back and said, no, the preliminary was wrong and flute is the most challenging one, we'll certainly do more with that. Okay, let's see. So we got through marching band, smaller groups, flex band. Oh yeah, we're at the bottom of page 5, digging deeply into the library and seeing. Now I'm on page 6. Again, I apologize again. I just want to make sure that I don't miss those Q&A. I also found some old transcriptions, some music by Bach. One of the names I've seen a lot is Mollmann, from some concert band music, really old transcriptions. And those I realized were arranged in such a way that I could actually use them for woodwind choir only. And of course the brass could be used too, and there are different ways I could do it. But if I put the alto saxes on the E-flat horn parts, everything else was covered. And the brass players that are playing are often doubling what is in the woodwinds. So that was another way I was able to come up with some woodwind choir music that I didn't have to buy, that I actually already owned. Similarly, some of the music, of course, we get comes with condensed scores, and there are strengths and weaknesses about having a condensed score. But one of the nice things about it is if you have a smaller group, either just rehearsing with them or a smaller group that you want to do some performances, the keyboard can be really nice to fill out parts, help the students feel more comfortable. Even playing along with organ and woodwinds and brass can be really quite nice that way. So the condensed score can work well. I've even found a few pieces, and 2 of them I listed there, Festivo by Nellie Bell and Concertino for Percussion and Band by Clifton Williams, that I can actually play the piece as a percussion feature with somebody playing the condensed score as an accompaniment. And so that gives me the opportunity to work with percussion and accompanied percussion. And again, it's music that I might have had in my library. And if I don't have any money to buy new music, this is a place that I might be able to go. Then I talk a little bit about using old pep band music, old quick step march-sized music, oldies and that sort of thing. Some of these are definitely done with 6-way or 4-way scoring, where you can cover the SATB and be able to use those pieces. I'm not talking about the ones that have really elaborate percussion parts, but some of the really old ones that you might have never thought about using before. And then you can laugh a little bit that some of those pep band tunes that somebody bought in the 1960s, they might be classic rock or jazz pieces now that you might be able to bring out and play. And again, play with a smaller group because the melody and bass line and the other parts are covered with what you have. And you might even find some old jazz things, so more of your students might be able to play in jazz styles than we might be able to find in some of our other concert band music. And then you could also dip into, if you have a library of solo and ensemble contest music, this might be the place to be able to use some of those with transposed parts, reading each other's transposed parts, or playing with multiple players on a part or something like that. And then if you do have a budget for music, and this is what I did just a little bit, I found some mixed ensembles music that came with lots of different transposed parts. So depending on whoever is in front of me at the time, we can use those. And these were some of the pieces I was going to have them play when we were going to play outside with the Prelude to the Prelude in front of the chapel. And one of the arrangers that really impressed me is David Marlatt. I don't know how many things he's got out there, but the arrangements that I got of his were really flexible for the instrumentations that I would have had. Now we'll go through the rest of page 6 and most of page 7 really fast. And these are all things that I think you probably already know, but it just might be a good refresher for you. So some creative ideas for substitutions, especially in school. So first I've listed a bunch of instruments that are C instruments that play in treble clef. Then on page 7, a bunch of instruments that are pitched in B flat and play in treble clef. And then a bunch of instruments that are bass clef instruments playing in C, and then treble clef instruments playing in E flat, and treble clef instruments playing in F. And so again, being able to think creatively about who can play what parts if you don't have your full group in front of you, or if students are assigned to be in your class at a particular time when you don't get to choose what the instrumentation is, that might be helpful to you. And I think you also already know the easy transposition between E flat instruments and bass clef instruments, but just in case anybody's out there that hasn't thought about this, let's look at F and G there. One of the easiest transpositions is for an E flat instrument to play a bass clef instrument part. Pretend the bass clef part is in treble clef, then add 3 sharps to the key signature, and then it works the other way. It's just the same thing. It's not perfect, of course. Some of the naturals become sharps and some of the naturals become flats, but the students, once they figure it out, and you too, that can work out really nicely. So again, if you're looking at E flat saxes and all you have are bass clef parts, you can have them do that easy transposition. Then some other alternatives in the classroom, and I know that there are some of you that your school administration in trying to be as safe as possible has said no singing or no instruments or whatever this particular semester. And again, as frustrating as that can be, we just have to do what we can do. And so this might be the time to do some things like improvisation, composition, and handbells. And so my suggestion there in number 1 is improvising with improvisation. And I know that there are lots of folks out there that don't do improvisation because they're afraid and they didn't have enough experience in middle school, high school, and college, so they're afraid to do it. This might be the perfect time to try it out when you're able to do different things and try some new things and you can't do what you're used to doing. And of course, with improvisation, the only way to get better at it is to improvise regularly. And so if you start very basically with yourself and with your students, you might be able to be a little bit more comfortable that way. Then I'm suggesting along the lines of improvisation, you can create your own materials. You can use or adapt things that you might have in your jazz band library. You can purchase materials for beginning improvisers, like from Jamie Aebersold. There's plenty of stuff online if you dig around some. And there are even some concert band compositions that are for basic improvisation study. And at least 3 of those are written by my friend Lissa Fleming May from Indiana University. And those are pieces that work really well. Even if you have a larger group, we want to start to do some basic improvisation. Composition is another area that a lot of people just don't have time for when they have concerts and other sorts of performances coming up all the time. So this might be an opportunity to do some composition with your students. And then you probably don't have lots of mallets sitting around. You probably don't have handbells that aren't being used or hand chimes, but maybe you do. And if you know that these are sitting around in some closet in your school district, this might be the perfect time to be able to do some playing of mallet percussion instruments or handbells or whatever. If we can't sing, if we can't do band, if we can't do orchestra, jazz band, and that sort of thing. And I'm always talking about the fact that I think all music majors should have to take at least 1 semester of Handbell Choir, because it's the place where you really understand if you can subdivide and count rhythms. But anyway, if you have the opportunity, Handbell Choir, percussion ensemble, string quartet, these might be our most safe musical ensembles right now, since we can be masked all the time. And we're doing handbells here at VU, masked, no tables, no sharing music. We can talk more about that later if we have time to do that. And then some other performance options. I talked a little bit about a bunch of these earlier, but I'll dig in just a little bit further. And And you just think about, what do you have? What do you have outside? Can you use an athletic field, a stadium, a parking lot, a band shell, town park, gazebo, pavilion, amphitheater, front steps of a building, large tent with no sides? What's there? What's in your community? What's on your school grounds that you might be able to use, or at church or somewhere else in your community? And trying to be creative. I mentioned Prelude to the Prelude outside the chapel here at VU. I mentioned the parking lot performances that we think we're going to do at some of the other places here in Valparaiso. Oh, Andy wrote in to ask if anyone is looking for improvisation materials and uses smart music. There are lots of materials in there for individual work. Great suggestion, Andy, thanks. And then I wondered too, under performance options, if your school can do any sort of live streaming. And I don't really have much experience here. And so you really have to find out about copyright rules and other sorts of rights and what you have to pay for. But can you use Facebook Live? Does your school have a radio station? Does your school have a TV station? Can you do some broadcasts that way in a safe manner? And if your stage is too small, maybe you can put the performers out in the audience facing the stage and you can conduct from the stage. Just trying to be creative and think about any ideas that I might be able to use. And then we mentioned the other ideas, Prelude to the Prelude, outdoor concert. Maybe instead of having a pep rally, especially if you're not doing sports this fall, maybe you can have a short outdoor concert for the school. And then teaching band online. And those of you that are doing this are absolutely heroes. As I mentioned, all of the classes I'm teaching right now are in person, but the student teachers aren't. And so I've been watching our student teachers by Zoom, where they're sending me videos, and I'm just in awe of all of you that are trying to teach music when you're looking at people on a screen. It's amazing. Maybe one of the good things about it, especially if you're doing things individually, is maybe a little bit more time with students, especially to be able to target specific areas. You've seen the beginner band tryout kits. If you haven't, you can contact your local dealer. These are things that the students can try out at home with you watching online. With larger groups, I've seen some folks where the students are playing along with a recording. They're muted, of course, so that they can hear the recording and they can hear themselves. And it's not just a big mess on the screen, but that's one thing that some people are doing. Others are using things like smart music, which is what Andy suggested a few minutes ago. And then in item F, we'll get to in a little while, you might experiment with some of these programs that are claiming to be lower latency, so less time delay. I haven't used any of these, so I'm not sure if they work or if they would work, especially with middle school or high school or college students. But it's something that you might try. I don't know how you could conduct in a situation like that, but maybe some of you can do that sort of thing. Then another project, of course, that a lot of people have been doing is making recordings. This can be an excellent way to focus on details. You want them to be able to make the recording and make their own part at the highest level possible. And that gives you an opportunity for a performance. But one of the things I want to continue to stress, though, is there's a cost. You can't just make a recording and distribute it, even if you don't sell it. So I've listed here that easysonglicensing.com is one of the places you can go to see how much it would cost if you decide to make a recording with your group. And so it takes a lot longer than you would expect, the mixing and the layering. And then, of course, we've seen lots of the video ones online, and they're really cool. They're really cute. Some are doing just audio. And as I mentioned earlier in our discussion here, the one that we will do if we all get sent home is going to be audio only. And so then my last thing before we get to latency and copyright has to do with what else can we be doing to motivate our students to keep playing when school is online. And I know for some of you that some of the students just have completely tuned out. Others aren't practicing or are practicing less than usual and that sort of thing. And so if there's a way to get the group together safely, Wouldn't that be nice? Even if we're all online, I know you have to get permission for that. And then another suggestion I have is to select more of the music that you know they're going to like. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to play a whole concert of just pop music or music of maybe lesser artistic value, but you also have in your mind a list of music like, I know that this is one that students have liked every time I've ever played it. And this might be the time for us to be playing the music that the students can't wait to get online with you to be able to play. And so if you have the opportunity to go with the superstar tunes like that, I would suggest to do that. You might also give them links to music that you're working on that the professional ensembles are playing and that you can have them look at, like the Marine Band or a group like that. And not just audio when they might doze off or be playing video games, but could they watch and could they see their instrument being played by somebody from the Air Force Band or something like that. And maybe that would motivate them a little bit more. Then at the bottom there, these are the programs that other people have suggested to me that have lower latency. I haven't tried any of these, so I don't know if they work, but you might experiment Jack Trip, Sound Jack, Jam Kazam, and there are a few links there that you can check out with that. And then I've mentioned copyright a few times, and so I'll talk about it just a little bit more as we're coming to the end, and we can get to more questions if you have some. We can't just copy music, we can't just arrange music, we can't just record music. And there are plenty of people out there that do that, and I'd hate for any of you to get in trouble for that. So always understand what you need to do. If you do want to create your own arrangement of something, and maybe your students, maybe this is a class project, Trisona is one of the companies that you can contact, and they'll take care of all the money stuff, both getting permission and then collecting the money. It always costs more than I think it should, but that's one way that you can do that. If your favorite pop tune is, you want to arrange it with your group, that a group like Trisona would be one of the ones to contact. And then College Music Society and NAFME and National Federation all have come out, even within the last month or so, with links to copyright ideas and suggestions and so forth. And so that's what the links are for the rest of page 10. And I don't know if the links are going to work in what you've got, but you can at least go to those websites and search for the copyright stuff and then find out to make sure that you're staying as legal as possible. Okay, so now I'm looking at the Q&A. If you want to send some more Q&A in that way, looks to me like we have roughly 10 minutes left in our time. So if there's more things that you would like to talk about, let's go ahead and do that. I'm looking also over at the chat. Christina said Paul had a question. And also in the chat, Luke bought small storage totes to collect spit, disinfect each day. I've seen people also use, for that same thing that Luke is suggesting, I've seen some people use the top of boxes, that have computer paper or photocopying paper. I learned that from Scott Pockner when he was teaching in Wisconsin. Dottie Burrows, hi. What is your suggestion for community band restarts who have older populations? That is a great question. So Dottie, what we're doing here is I'm giving people the option. And while it's still a little warm, I've mentioned a couple of times this idea with us playing outside. And so my first step was I got permission at these two retirement areas to be able to use their facilities. And I gave them all of the safety protocols that I was going to do. And I'm going to go over there and mark the parking lot with sidewalk chalk a couple hours before we play. And then each of our people is going to receive a packet of music when they show up. We're not going to rehearse till the day of the gig. Or actually, we're not going to rehearse at all. So I'm going to choose level 1 and level 2 music. And when they show up, each person will be handed a folder with their music. They're bringing their own stand. They're bringing their own clothespins, all that sort of thing. They'll know where to stand in the parking lot. And then we'll just play some stuff together. And as I mentioned, my invitation to our people basically said, please don't feel obligated at all. Your health is the most important thing. If you want to come and play, here's what we're going to do, and here are the safety protocols we're going to follow. If not, just stay tuned, and as soon as we can get back together, we can. I'm really worried, even if, for example, even if VU gives us the opportunity to start up community band again, I'm really worried about the number of people. And does that mean that for a 2-hour community band rehearsal, I'll have 20 minutes with 20 people and we'll send them out and have a 20-minute break and then 20 more minutes with another group of 20? Maybe that's what I'll have to do second semester if they let people come back on campus. But I don't want to end up like that poor choir that they keep talking about from Washington. That was the super spreader event. And I want to do everything I can to ensure their safety, and I don't want to twist anybody's arm to come back before they can. So thanks, Dottie. Laurel Sanders said, I had a conflict and joined very late in the talk. Where can I find the handouts you're referencing? You can go to the chat, and Christina had put a link in right at the very beginning. And if you can't find that, let us know and we'll get the handout to you.
Yep, I just put it back in as well. So if you joined late, you should be able to see that now.
Thank you. Jess says, in Wisconsin, we have state mask mandate until the end of September. Will you continue to have students mask themselves and instruments even if there's no state mandate? Great question. And actually, we have a state mandate and a county mandate and a VU mandate. There's mandates. So anyway, I'm saying yes. I'd rather come out of this and having people say, he was a fanatic, like having the outside door open, even when it gets cold. He was just a fanatic. I can't believe that he was doing that. He's obsessed with fresh air. I'd much rather have people think I was crazy for doing that and have nobody be sick than to have it be the other way. And luckily, everybody, no one has complained about that yet. Thanks for that, Jess. I would keep doing it. Jen writes in and says, another recorder question. Should we attempt to cover the window as well? I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you're talking about something on the recorder, I wouldn't try to cover up anything else. There are some pictures of people trying to play clarinet in a bag that isn't necessary. And okay, since you asked about the Handbell Choir, I'll tell you, those of you that can picture the chapel, in the north side and the south side, there are balconies. We call those the galleries. So the Handbell Choir at VU, which right now is 11 people, is set up in the northeast corner of the balcony, facing west. And I have everybody marked off 6 feet apart in every direction. And so basically all I can fit in up there are 2 rows of 6 or 5 or whatever it is, more or less, and I'm on a podium at the end of that. So it looks hilarious if you're used to usually seeing handbell choirs that they're standing. There's no tables, nobody's sharing music or anything like that. We're using the kneelers just in case we have a key change and someone has to grab an extra bell. And so anyway, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now. And we're just in the beginning of that and it seems to be working out pretty well. Everybody's masked, of course. Jacob Pritchard, hello. We're totally virtual this semester. Students are not allowed to enter the school. What are your recommendations, instrument repairs in this situation? I think that depends, is it a student instrument or a school instrument? And if you have a school instrument and you've got a budget for it, then you can get the music department or the music store folks to come and get those things, or have the students take it over there to get repaired. But yes, you must get things repaired. Just like being live, if the student's instrument doesn't work, you're not going to be doing anything. I suppose also if something really easy, Jacob is an oboist. I mean, if somebody can hold up their oboe and you can see that there is one of the screws that needs to be screwed in is a little loose and they've got a screwdriver, they could probably fix it. But for the most part, they'll probably have to send it in. Jen, sorry, I haven't done recorders in so long, I'm not sure. I wouldn't cover up anything except the bell as far as the recorder is concerned. Oh, this is so fun. Look at all these questions. Great. Brenda, Tim, one of the community bands I play in is not currently gathering and playing, and that's what I'm doing too. Director's begun a weekly online Zoom sessions that include music theory sessions, short mini online sessions, monthly social gatherings, which will keep us all engaged. What a great idea. Because as you know, of course, one of the coolest things about community band is we get to come together every week from all different backgrounds and ages and stuff. And I think if we're not meeting second semester, I might try that too. Thank you very much, Brenda, for that suggestion. And Doug Marsh says, one idea for getting beginner or K through 12 students to play more outside of class is to form a partnership with your local New Horizons band program. Great idea. Create mentor opportunities with adult musician, student musician. This can be done online or in person, good for both ages. Shows students music playing can be a lifelong activity. I think that's what a terrific idea. And some of those folks in the New Horizons bands are beginners too. So some of the things that the kids are experiencing, the New Horizons people have first. My only suggestion is to be sure you check with your school for security purposes before you do that, before you're sharing emails or Zoom addresses or anything like that, just to be sure that the school will sign off on that. Caleb says, maybe more of a comment than a question. In 2 weeks, our middle and high schools are going to a hybrid model, 2 groups meeting in person on different days. Still a third group who will continue to stay all virtual. My concern is keeping the third group engaged. I'm currently working on a good microphone solution to pick up all of the audio in the room, including my voice. It's a challenge. Yeah, and it's especially a challenge if the third group is trying to participate while you're teaching the live groups. I don't know if I could do that. And I know some of you are teaching that way right now. I think that would be extra difficult. And I wonder if you could do that by having the third group be on its own without everybody else in the class. But great. And that's what we're all doing. We were told, here's what's going to happen in your classroom, and then we just have to figure it out. Kyle says, sorry, I'm still in class, can't listen to the whole webinar. Will a recorded version be available? And Christina is going to tell us yes on that, I think.
Yes, we are being recorded. You should get the recording probably tomorrow morning.
Nice. Thank you. Well, oh, here's another one. Brenda Tim says, in a room where there are concerns about air exchange, can an open door and fans added be helpful, or fans not a good idea? Okay, great question. I'll tell you what I think I know. Issue 1, open door, definitely. As long as your school says security-wise it's okay. That's the main issue, is getting fresh air in there. And then the fans can be good too, and the fans can actually be blowing the air out the door. I've heard of some people too that have been putting MERV 13 material on one side of the fan to make their own air purifiers, but I don't know if that would work in a band room situation. So as long as you're not blowing the aerosols at the people and blowing them away, it's the way I understand it is that could work. But open window, open doors seems to be the thing to do as long as it's okay in your school. Virginia asks, can you give guidance for getting mechanical license for recording? So what you'll want to do is to go to, I think it was easysonglicense.com, which is in the handout there somewhere. And that's one of the ones, and what you'll do is they will ask you, what's the title, the composer, the arranger, the publisher and stuff. And you say what you want to do with it. And they will come back and say, excuse me, how much is it going to cost? That would be step 2 if you're doing your own arrangement. If you're just doing the recording, they'll tell you how much it's going to cost, and be prepared for it to be more expensive than you think it should be. Luke says, with everyone wearing a mask while playing, is the best option to have the beginners not wear a mask so you can see embouchure issues, or what other recommendations do you have? Oh man, that's a tough one. If they're at home, obviously they don't have to wear a mask. If they're in front of you, I guess I would have to start without a mask, at least at the beginning, so I could see the embouchure. So then I would have to have them really spread out in the room, still doing bell coverings. I think that's what I would do. Beth, hi Beth. I have not felt luckier to be an orchestra person. Yes, my band teammate is having her students play their primary instrument only at home and doing percussion ensemble music class. Just a suggestion for another way to do things. She says it's working really well for her in middle school. Exactly, and that's what I was talking about with mallet percussion, with handbells, with chimes, and it would work actually with any percussion or world drumming or even guitar or whatever. If they're in class, to be able to use these other instruments that are not aerosol producing, what a great idea, and you can be completely masked the entire time. And of course, playing strings is one of the other safest ones of all because you can be masked all times. And Dottie asks, what is MERV? You can Google that. I had never heard of that either, and it'll tell you. But basically, it's the stuff, for example, that's like in the filters for your furnace, and it collects the bad stuff going through. And so if you look that up, you can see where it is, and you can see where you can get it. And I got the impression you can pretty much get it at any of the big box stores. All right, they keep coming. This is fun. Doug Marsh, indoor air quality is all about the number of air changes per hour. Bring in fresh air, HVA system, HEPA filters, facility air handling units. It's best to talk to your facilities management maintenance about this. Doug is right. And I was going to mention that before and I forgot. One of the first things you can do, and I'm going to go back to Brenda's question. I was going to say this on Brenda's and I forgot. I would definitely go to the facilities people that you have, and it might be at the district level or it might be at your building level, and they should be able to tell you what the air exchange per hour is. And if I understand the experts correctly, ideally it would be 6 changes per hour, but 3 changes per hour is also pretty great. And so you definitely would want to talk to them and see if they've been doing anything differently, especially if you're in an older facility. Laura says, for beginners, I suggest wearing a face shield instead of a mask so you can demonstrate as well. I just asked them to pull it down quickly and put it back when they are done showing me. I'm not sure if I completely understand that. I just would warn everybody that if you're using a face shield, you're supposed to use a mask with the face shield. And I'm not exactly sure that that was what Laura was suggesting, but whatever you can do to see, and obviously we've got to be able to see embouchures or we're not going to be able to help those beginners. You can imagine how bizarre it would be after all this is over if everybody takes their mask off and they were doing bizarre stuff behind the masks. Director wears a face shield, the student wears a mask. Great, terrific. As long as the director is also wearing a mask under the face shield, probably going to be okay. Well, looks like we've run out of questions. Oh, nope, more, great. Virginia mentioned about at-home groups playing along. We just returned to partial in person. The at-home people say it's a lot more fun to play with what they hear in the room. I figured out how to have them record themselves once per day while in Zoom and submit participation checks. Worked well. That's great. And Virginia, actually, you were one of the ones I was using as an example. When I saw you teaching them using recordings, I was just absolutely in awe. And so great, your idea there is terrific. Recording students so that you can check in and make sure. And you can also see if they're making progress. That's great. Sarah Rusty, hi. My flutes are using the wind defenders and face shields. Great. Performance suggestion, one of our middle school band classes in person will be recorded in the cafeteria, 6 feet apart, playing 2 tunes for Veterans Day. Great idea. Cafeteria is a nice big space. Here at VU, we've been able to get into our ballrooms. We've been able to reserve them a little bit, and the ballrooms are nice and big, so that's helping us out too. And as long as you're doing, Sarah, the 2 tunes, that should work well. In the cafeteria, I'm not sure which middle school, but some of those cafeteria ceilings are pretty low. Back to Doug Marsh. Here is a good article, an easy to read article about building ventilation and HVAC from the Washington Post. As America struggles to reopen schools and offices, how to clean coronavirus from the air, experts are recommending a suite of measures to ensure healthy indoors across the country, though they're not mandatory. Yep. And those HEPA filters or HEPA filters make all the difference. I've got one here in my office. I'm not convinced that everything is safe in my building, so I've got my own air filter that I bought. Jacob Pritchard, I've seen others take pictures of their classrooms, and it looks like a max of 20 to 25 can be socially distanced apart, including percussion. If we're unable to move rooms for our classes for larger ensembles, what's your recommendation to convince the administration to keep the larger numbers without removing students? That's a great question. Jacob, I would go to the webinars that the scientists have put out so far and hear what they're saying about the distancing. And also, when you start to see those videos where they show someone walking in a door and it just looks totally gross with the aerosols following them and stuff, I'm hoping that would help the administrators understand. Now, in your school, maybe you could just have the band rehearse in the auditorium all the time. And again, put the students out in the seats well distanced and you on the stage, then maybe you could have a larger group. Maybe they won't let you do that, but that would be another way that you might suggest a compromise. Andrea High says, I've used YouTube for checking assignments online or have them record using their phones, but not as clear as a recording source. Yep. Well, folks, I have absolutely enjoyed being with you today. What a great honor. Thanks for spending your afternoon hanging out. I really appreciate it. I think the handout has my email address on it, so that if there's anything else you want to discuss or any messages you want to send, feel free to contact me at any time. I'd love to chat with you. So Christina can take us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Doebler, for doing this. I think it was really interesting, and I'm so appreciative that everybody was asking great questions and giving great suggestions. And I think it's just a testament to the stick-to-itiveness of music educators. So this is really exciting. There will be a recap email likely tomorrow once we upload the video for posterity. So you can reference it anytime, share it with a friend, and consider Lutheran summer music. You've heard a lot from Dr. Doebler about the safe band practices that he's been working on. So you can feel very confident sending your students to LSM next summer. And of course, if you have any questions about that, you can talk to Dr. Doebler or to me, and check out the rest of our webinars. We've got a few more coming up, and hopefully they'll all be just as informative and exciting as this one. So thank you very much, and hope you have a great rest of your evening.
I'm going to just say one more thing, if you don't mind. It looks like there's some more stuff in the chat. So those of you that are in the chat that didn't get your questions answered, why don't you send me an email message with your question and I'll send it right back to you. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you.